it's Nicole and welcome back for another Design with video. Today we are going to do some drips and some drops. It's going to be the easiest do-it-yourself background that you've ever made. So I've got a piece of Vicki Boutin Foundations cardstock, and what I'm going to use for my project is some of Vicki's art crayons as well, but you could definitely do the same technique with some distress ink that's been watered down, or watercolor markers or watercolor paints. So anything that you have that's water-based that you could add some water to, as I'm doing right here with the crayon, that you can create some drips on your page. So I have a large round paintbrush here, and as you can see, I have just gone in and added the water to the art crayon, and I'm just dripping and tapping that into my page. The more water you have gives you the ability to add a little more droplets. You just have to be cautious. You don't want to add too little or too much, because you won't be able to do any dripping or dropping, and that won't be too much fun. And you really want to make sure you have enough color in your product so that you can actually see that on the page. I'm using this Foundations cardstock because it doesn't really warp with water. It's a heavier gauge cardstock, so it really holds up well with the water. But if you don't and you're just using plain cardstock, you would definitely want to add like a gesso to the background, which will really just help, get some of that water from absorbing into the paper and warping. But you can see here, once your surface is ready to go, it's just a matter of adding droplets to the background. I am starting with a lighter color and working my way darker through the rainbow as I go. And I am using a bit of a heat set here just because I'm, number one, not very patient, but also it just helps me kind of move things along without having the colors bleed together. If you add another color before this one's dry, you're just going to create weird color combinations. Sometimes they'll work, but often they won't. So I'm going to start with that peach, and now I'm going to start building in some more colors. So I'm going to start with some yellow. Again, I'm going to add some clear water to that. I'm using a larger paintbrush right now, and I'm just tapping it against my finger so you can see to add small drops. So the closer I go to my page, the smaller my droplets are going to be. The closer to my page, the larger the droplets, the higher up I go, the smaller those droplets will be. So if you want to have bigger plops on your page, you want to have that closer and a lot of water. And if you want tiny little dusting of sprinkles, you want to have that higher up from your paper. And you can see I'm adding some larger bits here with my large paintbrush, and then I go in with the exact same color with a smaller paintbrush, also a round paintbrush, to get some even tinier dots. So if your paintbrush is bigger, you're going to get bigger drops too. If you're using a smaller paintbrush, you're going to get smaller drops. So I'm just repeating over and over the exact same process as I go, again, working from a lighter to a darker color palette. And this here is a bit of a mustardy kind of yellow that I really love. And I'm just adding some big drops at first while I have a lot of water in my product. And then I'm going to do my taps with the large paintbrush, and then again with the small. And for me, I want to create a bit of a cluster of the splatters on the left-hand side of my paper here. So I'm really kind of focusing in on one area of where I know I'm going to have my photo and my embellishments, etc. So as things dry with my heat tool, there's, sometimes it could take a while. So I'm using my paper towel there to roll off any sort of wet surface, and that will just absorb any of the extra color. The longer the paint or the product sits on your paper, the more kind of color you're going to get, more vibrancy. So you don't want to rub that color off too early. You want to give it some time to sit. So that's why I'm using a heat gun. But if you're definitely patient and you're willing to wait in between colors, you don't really need the paper towels. You just need to make sure each color is dry before moving on to the next. So as you can see, I'm just adding a bit of a rusty orange color here now to make this feel a little just slightly autumn. And I'm doing that same thing with the large paintbrush. And now I'm going to go ahead and just look for my next color and add that in once I do a bit of heat set. So you can see you kind of have a nice variation between larger droplets and smaller droplets. And the colors are really starting to blend together nicely. You can still see each of the different colors, but nothing is like a brown, muddy texture. So that's really kind of important, and that's why you want to let everything kind of dry in between. So it doesn't look like tons right now, but as you continue to add that color, and those droplets get closer and closer together, you really start to layer the colors that you're using. So be careful that you don't layer colors in the wrong families, because you could create a bit of a hot mess. But don't fear if you are practicing this and you try it out and it's not looking quite the way you want it for your background. Don't throw it out. It's still great to be, front of a card, or you can punch it in from some shapes. There's a lot of possibilities in some of this practice that you can do. So don't ever think that you've wasted that paper. You can definitely use it for something else, maybe just not as large scale as you had intended it to be. Now I wanted to add a little bit more yellow back into my background only because it was kind of buried a little there with the orange and that blue I had just entered. So I added a little bit more yellow to the top because there's quite a bit of yellow in my photo, and dab that off and just add a little bit of navy just to bring in a little bit of a slightly dark color to my project. Even though again I will kind of dab off a lot of the color, it's just going to help bring in that subtle blue versus all that yellow and orange that I've created already. So there's my photo there. You can kind of see the colors that I've developed for the background kind of really work with what is in that photo. That was my intention here with my page. So now I have some beautiful paper and embellishments here from Crate Paper, and I'm just going ahead and I'll be honest, for the most part, I'm just going to cut some random sizes of paper, trim them down to about 5 or 6 inches, and just create a bit of a cluster for the top left corner of my page. And what I want to do is layer my photo with some foam adhesive to give it just a little bit of depth and height. I'm going to do the same thing with some of these embellishments as well, just to kind of give everything a little natural pop off of the page. So at first I thought I would just layer some strips of paper, but then I realized that was a little bit just too much straightness. So I decided to start tearing some of the paper as my strips and add those into the layers as I went. So I'm going to start sticking some things down now with my tape runner and some of those envelopes that I had taken out of the package, and then just adding some more foam adhesive to make my photo pop a little bit more. Foam adhesive is really everybody's best friend. I love these rolls that you can get, that you can just have a whole lot at your fingertips. So this yellow piece of paper here, it was a little too short when I trimmed it, so I just ripped it in half there and kind of hid that in behind that piece of the envelope so that it fits along the same line with the rest of the papers on my page. And I'm going to do that same thing here with this tiny little skinny strip. You'll be able to see that everything will line up nicely. So I'm trying to think of what else I can do to kind of embellish those papers. I don't want to add a whole lot more paper to my page because I don't want to cover up that background. I did all that work and I really want that to show. So I really love this floral cluster. It's great because it kind of fills in that top right edge of the photo, but it also shows the background behind it because it is clear. So I'm going to use that for the top, and then I'm going to take a couple tags here from the ephemera pack and use my mini stapler if I can get the staples in. I'll use the mini stapler just to staple the two of them together so they don't move around too much, and tuck them into that pocket that I've used from the pocket envelope tags. So I thought about adding a few more of these embellishments from the ephemera pack. Right now, I don't think I will. I will use this photo frame, though, not to hold a photo, but more of a bit of a tag to kind of have a like a sentiment underneath my photo. So I'm just going to staple a couple pieces here of that stapler and then play around a little bit with the placement of where I want to put that. And then I toyed around with adding in a few more clear embellishments just so that background still shows up. And I really like this pendant. It kind of brought in a little bit more green and like a teal color. So I'm going to pop that up with a little bit of foam adhesive as well, and then just wiggle things around a little bit more from where they were, just to kind of get a better balance of where I wanted them on my project. So I'm going to close all that up now, and I think at this point I'm trying to think of what I want to use for my title, but there is a bit of a bare area between that little beautiful title there as well as that pendant, so I am going to use some washi tape right away and just use that as a good filler. Washi tape is great for a lot of things, but what I really like is when you just want a tiny little piece of something, a tiny little piece of paper or a tiny little piece of something just to fill in an area. Washi is really great for that, to add in some pattern and some color and just to fill in little areas without having to be too fussy. So I just ripped off a piece there and I added that to the bottom. And then I'm going to start on with my title with some of these stickers here, also from Crate Paper, that coordinate with this collection. And they're kind of a bit of an epoxy kind of, I guess it's an epoxy kind of texture. I really like the kind of the handwritten feel of it, so it kind of goes with the softness of my photo. So I'm just going to add this. I'm going to call these sun clouds. I'm not sure what the actual real word for these are, but I just love the pretty clouds in the summertime when the weather is warm and you get that nice kind of sunset starting. So sun clouds is what it's going to be. So I'm going to add my letters. I like using a paper piercer to kind of place my letters. It helps me kind of lift them and just move them around. So I have that here on my finger, and I'm just using that to kind of place my letters how I want them so I can get the taller letters in nicely around the kind of shorter ones there. So once I have my title down and I have a lot of my embellishments kind of in place, it's really just time to start figuring out where I might need some balance. So my title is balanced quite nicely versus the tags that are on the more left side of the page. So I'm really just trying to fill in any little gap areas or have some pieces to float over. So this little circle tag sticker here, I'm going to pop with foam adhesive, and that's just going to kind of fill in that little empty corner in that left corner of the photo and overlap. And I'm going to add a little bit of heart to the edge there of my title, as you'll see in a moment. And then I toyed around with adding a few more floral stickers, but I really didn't want it to be too florally on my page. So I settled on just another strip of washi into that top corner of my photo, just to bring some more of that green teal color. And the one thing I like to do on almost every page is add just a few little drops of black ink, just to kind of round out and add a bit of neutrality. So I'm going to do that, and that will be it for my project. So here's a bit of a close-up of all those drips we did. They're just so fun. I just love the drips and how easy it is. And if you don't have that right background paper, it's not a lot of hard work to make something like this on your own. It's soft and fun, just like my photo. So I'm going to really hope that you give this one a try. Anyone can do this. If I can, you certainly can too. And I will see you again next month on Scrapbook and Cards Today blog.